Let's expand the conversation. Senior Associate at Richard Spoor, Thamsanqa Malusi, joins us for more. A very good evening to you, Thamsanqa. Thank you so much for your time. As clients who have been waiting for many, many years, hoping to get some sort of accountability, what does this now represent?
I think it's important not to create a storm in a teacup, right? I think settlement discussions and interim relief discussions are part and parcel of a litigation process. And we started having this discussion with brands when we initiated the litigation in March of 2018. And there has been ongoing back and forth discussions on the subject of interim relief and on the subject of settlement. And all these discussions are without prejudice, which means they are non-binding until at a point where there's actual agreements on what exactly the terms of settlement and the terms of interim relief are. And they're also non-binding. So we haven't reached any agreement with Tiger Brands whatsoever on settlement or on interim relief. All of this is part of our ongoing discussions, as I said, on settlement. And so it's really important not to create more of this than what it actually is. It's a simple, at this point, indication of a willingness to provide some sort of assistance to a limited number of people that form part of the class action. That indication, as I've said, is non-binding. And is without prejudice until such point where there is actual agreement on it. What we know for a fact is that Tiger Brands continue to dispute liability to the victims of the 2017-2018 Listeriosis outbreak.
What processes will still need to follow in order to get to that point where an agreement has essentially been reached and there is a way forward?
That is entirely up to Tiger Brands. We have provided them with all the necessary evidence required to reach settlement. We had announced earlier this year that the National Institute for Communicable Diseases provided us with additional evidence which establishes proof that Tiger Brands is responsible for the outbreak. This is what's called CGMLST, which effectively showed that there is a genetic fingerprint between the listeria that was contracted by the victims of the outbreak and the products and environment that were received from the Tiger Brands Polokwane facility. And that evidence was not necessary because even before that, there was already existing evidence that showed that the specific strain of listeria that infected majority of the people that were part of the outbreak came from Tiger Brands facility. So since 2018, 2017, about 6 years ago when this outbreak happened, there's always been sufficient evidence that Tiger Brands is responsible, and they've refused to accept liability, and they continue to refuse to accept liability for the outbreak, for the victims of this outbreak. So hence I'm saying there is no need for this to be more than what it actually is, which is some indication that they're willing to accept some liability, but they actually haven't done that.
Yeah, willing is the operative word there because, yes, you're right, it hasn't happened. Liability has not yet been determined. What kind of settlement agreement are you hoping on as these discussions are ongoing and the back and forth takes place?
Well, what we have claimed for is the damages that have been suffered by the victims of the outbreak, which is the loss suffered in consequence of people contracting listeriosis, and that's all we can claim for. So the settlement mirrors what we have pleaded on our papers. So Tiger Brands must compensate the victims. They must compensate the little babies that have contracted listeria and have ongoing medical complications, and their young lives have been significantly complicated as a result of contracting listeriosis. That's what we want Tiger Brands to compensate for, and we want them to do that urgently because the longer we take providing assistance to these children, these people that contract listeriosis, the worse their conditions become. And it's egregious, in our opinion, that we are 6 years down the line with all the evidence that we have against Tiger Brands that we haven't reached settlement. All we have is a denial of liability from Tiger Brands and some indication that they are contemplating or willing to settle some of the victims of this outbreak. That's egregious, it's unacceptable, and hence we are saying this should not be read for more than what it actually is.
You speak about something that has been happening for close to 7 years, and as you and I speak, food safety standards in South Africa have come under scrutiny in the informal food space, and you're still battling with a big corporate, a big conglomerate, which should have really moved swiftly and protected its brand and so forth, and that hasn't happened. What does it mean for the smaller businesses when food safety on this level that you're operating on is really a head-butting moment?
You've hit the nail on the head there about why litigation of this nature is important to ensure food safety. If you can kill over 200 people, and if you can sicken over 1,000 people, most of which are the most vulnerable members of our society, we're talking about children that contracted listeria in utero from their mothers, who at the point of consuming Tiger Brands products were unassuming that it will get them and their unborn babies sick. We're talking about elderly. We're talking about people that were immunocompromised, the most vulnerable members of our society. And in addition to that, there is proof of where the contaminant came from. If it will take more than 6 years to settle such a case where there's strong evidence the victims are the most vulnerable in our society, surely then the small guy will also not budge, will also not do anything to make sure that their food is safe for consumption. Because if you cannot hold someone that kills 1,000 people and 200 people and sickens 1,000 more with serious complications accountable, then you're not going to hold anyone else accountable. So this litigation is important because it shows that sickening and killing people comes at a cost, and we need to realize that cost urgently for the people that are in desperate need of it.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening and really just emphasizing a few points and factors about the development of this case. Senior Associate at Richard Spoor Inc, Thamsanqa Malusi.